I wanted to record a quick series of videos on the color correction project. There's a 4-week section, and you're doing 3 different projects for color correction. The first one is just basic color correction, just automatic levels or variations on some photos that I am going to supply to you. The second color correction project is actually to select the third color correction project, which will be the more complicated project. So the color correction 2 is just simply selecting a photograph. And that's what I'm going to talk about here, is how you select a photograph. I have some different requirements for this. The requirements I have really center around the idea of the photograph having not just global color issues, but localized color issues, and some fairly significant color issues. And I wanted to talk about, show you a photograph that actually meets these needs, and then explain exactly what this all means. So here is a photograph that has some pretty significant issues. This is a photo that was probably shot in the early 80s, and then for whatever reason, poor chemistry, being exposed to sunlight, whatever, the image has color issues. So obviously it has global color issues. I mean, that's pretty apparent. But how do we know if it has localized color issues? And let's explain what we mean by localized versus global. Global color issues are going to be issues that can be corrected by one color correction that applies to the entire photograph. Local color issues are color issues that are specific to a particular area of a photograph that are going to require color correction used with some sort of isolation method. And the isolation method that I'm going to be teaching you guys is something called layer masks, and that's a part of adjustment layers. We're stepping it up here. We're learning to work even more so with non-destructive techniques to keep things flexible. So how do we know if an image has more than global issues? Now, this image is pretty badly out of whack as far as the color goes, so there's really not much question in my mind that this is going to have some local issues. But let's show you how you might be able to tell. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a really quick levels adjustment layer, and I'll even start just by clicking auto. Not much happened because there's a pretty serious shift in the color. In fact, what it is I think if we really examine the colors, there's just not very much blue in a lot of areas. So let's look at the red and try to play with the red a little bit, and then we might even just try to set a white point. Let's see, that didn't help us. That actually shifted the red back. So obviously pretty nasty color. Okay, so but if I move my red slider, midpoint slider, over here a little bit, I'm getting some of that red down, and that's helpful. If I play the blue, maybe. So I feel like I'm getting a little bit closer. That's a better color situation than what we had at the beginning. I can just toggle the visibility going back and forth. But obviously, it's not enough. There's a lot of other issues. Like, at this point, I actually feel like this foreground is probably pretty close. The shirt is pretty close. These overalls, they could be a little bit more blue, but they're not too bad. They're actually pretty decent. But the skin tone is very yellow here, very jaundiced, and then the fingers are purple, and then the background is rather dull as well. So we have lots of areas that we can work locally to try and address some of this color. I'm going to go through this in steps, and I just showed you the first step, but I'm going to go over the second step again in the next video, and that is going to be the global color corrections. What I was just simply trying to show you here is trying to determine whether or not a photograph is appropriate. And color-wise, this photograph is appropriate. The next thing I might look at, of course, is the image resolution. So look at the image size. And this I have, what I look at here, don't look at the width and the height independently, because if you're not looking at the resolution, you're not going to have the correct information. What you're going to look at here is the width and the height. And I have 2,000 by almost 3,000. That's a pretty good amount of information. Remember, the reason why we look at this is because the less information we have, the more difficult the project becomes. So I don't want to set you guys up for failure. I want you to have the tools that you need. This photo has appropriate size, so I'm not terribly concerned about it. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. This is a great photo. This photo is going to get approved in a moment. I mean, I'm going to take one glance at it and say absolutely yes. So now you hopefully have a better idea as to the selection process. And this is a quick, easy 10 points. All you got to do is find a photo and submit it that you think that you're going to actually take through the process.